Thanks, Robin. I am looking forward to this. This is a very special episode, I think, because I get to chat with somebody who's not just a franchise expert, but a franchisor as well. And as somebody who's been involved in franchising for a long time and on the part of restaurant transfers of franchises and also as a franchisor. So this is going to be exciting.
It will be. We have quite a journey that our because we are kind of on both sides of transactions. We see those folks emerging in the space, that we see them when they need to transfer units out. And then we're taking those lessons and using them to the benefit of our own franchise to attract and retain the best possible talent for our brand.
Nice. All right. Well, here we go. Well, Robin, let's start out with, I understand you co-founded this business back in 2001. How did you get started?
So it was very interesting. My husband's background, he was with KPMG, Big Five accounting, doing business development. My background, I was with Fortune 100 company. I was actually the VP of strategic marketing for the Macy's South division, which was all of the stores. I lived in Atlanta. It was all the stores east of Texas, and then up to the DC area and down to Florida. And, we have always been entrepreneurial. And someone said, Atlanta needs a good restaurant broker. And so there we went, started out, developed the brand name. Of course, I'm still doing my marketing role, but I'm doing nights and weekends. I'm developing the website, doing the branding and all of those things. And after a couple of years, I said, you know what, let's just go all in, do it together. And so we developed this brand. And 2 decades later, here we are. We're coast to coast, 45
Wow.
states, knocking on the door of 450 million in listings and over 1,000 listings. So, just keep growing by leaps and bounds, and very excited about it.
I love hearing how people started. It was sort of like you had this, one day there's this entrepreneurial seizure. Somebody told you that we needed this in Atlanta. And then suddenly that's it. Like you and your husband are like, you're off to the races. Like, yep, that's it. Life's changing. We're going to start this business. Isn't that crazy how things happen?
It absolutely is. And of course, when we started, we thought, okay, well, Atlanta needs a good restaurant broker. And then what we learned is that people really deserve and need a specialist in this industry, like the guy who's selling a daycare center and a car lot and an industrial complex. That is not the person who understands and really has empathy for the restaurant seller. And so that specificity has been what served us so well. And it's interesting because when we started, people would say to us, why are you limiting yourself? And in retrospect, it was the best thing we could have ever done, because now we sort of own that digital space online. If someone says, how do I buy a restaurant? How do I sell a restaurant? Odds are we're going to come up.
It is brilliant. That is a brilliant idea. I think thinking back to most of us that when we start a business, we're so worried about failing that we think we have to appeal to everybody, right? So we think if by offering something to everyone, we're going to, throw it against the wall and see what sticks, and hopefully we'll get customers. But it's to your detriment. Like by having a niche market, that's how you ultimately succeed, is by focusing.
Absolutely. And having the discipline to just stay in that lane and never just try to, despite the years when people have said, well, what about this or what about this, just kind of staying very, very true to, we are going to service this vertical only, and do it super, super well.
Wow. Okay. This is why I'm excited about this episode with you, because you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in franchising. And since our audience, I think of it as, we have emerging founders that are, they're in the grind right now, trying to, in franchising their business. There's people who are looking to franchise. And the other half of our audience are people who are looking to become a franchisee. And I understand you guys are really in the resale side of the business of transfers, but you've seen in franchising really good franchisors, not so good franchisors, and I would love to get that distinctive difference on, what have you seen as what has made specifically an emerging franchisor? What does it take for them to break through and become an established brand? Like, how do they get out of being stalled out?
So I think the first thing is they absolutely must be capitalized in such a way that they don't make bad decisions, because it begins with that person you let into your brand. And, honestly, for we sell restaurants, we end up being the cleanup on aisle 5 for all the mistakes, right? All the people that that Fran Dev said, oh, they're going to be great. And then they never left their day job. They're going to be great, but they didn't have enough capital to last past year one. So we have really seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And my advice to emerging brands is, be so disciplined. I mean, I know that it's cool to be talking about responsible franchising now, but because we had sort of that entree into what that world looks like when you're trying to get people out of your system, it's just so much smarter to never let them in the first place. So have enough money so that you're not dependent on selling that next franchise. Get yourself either enough capital or your brand in such a way that you can be, royalty self-sufficient and not need to sell a unit in order to be successful.
Where were you in 2003 when I needed you?
I was 2 years into this brand.
I started out, I immediately sold my company on location, all the cash flow gone, and I went all in. And thank goodness it was 2003. And as you know, selling franchises in 04, 05, 06 was not that difficult. And that's the only reason why I'm probably still here to this day, is that I did not start in 08, 09, and that I started when I did. But I made that common mistake that a lot of people make is I wanted to be all in, but I didn't think about I wasn't prepared with the cash flow that I was going to need, because I just assumed I've got this great idea. People are going to want to buy franchises. And I thought people were going to get up and running as quickly as I got up and running. And of course, then I interpreted that as, okay, I did the math and the royalties and thinking about, oh my gosh, money's just going to start flowing in. And I was almost bankrupt within 2 years. I couldn't have been any more wrong. I really was close.
Yeah, and that transparency, listen, this is why your audience tunes into this show. Just being that candor and transparency is so important in this industry. Listen, you literally have to know going in that you're all in personally, but you cannot count on your franchisees to be all in at that same level. They're not, that whole rinse and repeat. And I've seen franchisors start and they have a great idea and it works in a metropolitan area. And they're like, okay, we're off to the races. But they never tested it in suburbs, or they never tested it against a different demographic group. Now we have to be so much smarter and more effective and more challenging of our own concepts in order to achieve those next units. And the folks that are selling their way into success, they won't make it long term because too many of those units are going to turn over.
Yeah. And the restaurant business is not an easy business either.
It's absolutely not. There is so much competition and there's velocity. That's one reason why for a restaurant brokerage business brand like ours, it's an ideal candidate because there is so much turnover. People get in and people get out. I tell people the greatest thing that ever happened to our business model was Bobby Flay and the Food Network. He made it look so sexy to be in the restaurant.
Right.
And so they want to get in, and then, they want to get out. And also, it's a lifestyle change, right? Like, I've been with buyers who will buy from me. They're young men, and they're like, I want a bar, and I'm going to have a sports bar, and it's going to be great.
Exactly.
And then I see them get married, and I see all the announcements. And then a few years later, they're like, okay, my wife wants me to do this. I need to clean the shop so I can be home at 3 every day. And so,
oh, my gosh.
Yeah, they just transition.
Robin, it's almost like you can start a timer. As soon as a young guy buys a sports bar, you're like, and we're off. It's that 5 to 7 year window before they're calling you going, no, I can't do this anymore.
Exactly.
With the similarity though, between the restaurant business and just my business and others is that sometimes people get caught up in the brand of what they think they're going to be doing every day. Like if they think they're running a sports bar, they think they're going to be watching football, watching golf during the day. It's like, that is nothing that you are not going to be doing any of that.
You are so right. I cannot tell you the number of people that come to me and they're like, and now this pizza shop open and I'm going to make pizzas. What are you thinking? Yes. And a lot of people actually have a skill set that's super, super good in that entrepreneurial checklist startup phase. But then they get to that realization of, now what? And they really are having to, deal with the vendors and negotiate discounts and help with the payroll and make sure that the truck gets checked in with the inventory and all those things, and life comes at you fast.
Yeah.
And restaurant business is tough. We tell people it's a penny business. You have these prime costs you have to manage. You have to manage food, you have to manage labor, and you can't get over your head on an occupancy cost with a landlord who definitely wants to take all your money before you even get to that, get started.
Right. You're picking up dimes in front of the steamroller, so to speak.
That's right.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.